It was a case that had it all. A flamboyant stockbroker, a beautiful model, murky business dealings and a deadly mystery. And at the centre of it all was chauffeur Gordon Wood. Everyone believed Gordon Wood had murdered his girlfriend Caroline Byrne, that he'd thrown her off the Gap, a well-known Sydney suicide spot. He was convicted and given a lengthy prison sentence. But Gordon Wood is now free after winning a sensational appeal. He is an innocent man, but it seems public opinion isn't swayed so easily. Tonight, Gordon Wood tells his story. On a cliff top at the edge of Sydney Harbour, Gordon Wood contemplates the past 17 years. This is The Gap, a notorious Sydney suicide spot where Gordon Wood's girlfriend Caroline Byrne died and where he was said to have murdered her. When you look at where Caroline died, can that ever leave your mind?
I can't look at it. I don't want to look at any of that.
Just can't do it.
Goodger Street goes round the corner.
Gordon Wood is now a free man, acquitted by the New South Wales Court of Appeal.
I don't eat the jail food, so
Yeah, this is food, I suppose.
this is real food, fresh food, that's all that matters.
And after 3 years in jail, he's come home to his mother Brenda and sisters Jackie and Michelle.
I always knew I would win and prove my innocence, but being free still isn't natural, let's say that. It doesn't feel natural, but it's definitely right.
There will always be people who will not believe you.
Oh, but there's people who believe George Bush blew up the Twin Towers. There's people who believe Lindy Chamberlain killed Azaria. It's nonsense. But the only thing that hurts me on a personal level is that anybody could even suspect me.
Prosecutors said Wood threw Caroline off the Gap.
Investigations continued.
Caroline Byrne's tragic death was a saga that had it all.
My daughter was murdered.
Models, millionaires, and even a high society matron. A story driven by salacious rumour, suspicion, and innuendo. It began when Gordon Wood met Caroline Byrne in 1992. She was the beautiful model, he was the economics graduate, working as a fitness instructor in Sydney's eastern suburbs. And it was virtually love at first sight.
Well, it sounds glib to say she was the love of my life, but she was. I asked her to marry me within about 3 or 4 weeks. I just knew. It wasn't something I had to think about, I just knew. And she said yes straight away. And we never looked back from there.
As they planned for the future, Gordon signed on as driver and assistant to flamboyant stockbroker Renee Rivkin.
Okay, so the legs lead.
And Caroline began working with society deportment queen June Daly-Watkins. All the signs for their future were good. But then suddenly, on June 7th, 1995, on a cold, dark winter's night, Caroline Byrne's body was found at the bottom of the Gap. Do you recall the actual moment when you knew she was dead?
I was at the top of the cliff. I imagine that was the real realisation that there was no getting Caroline back. And they said they'd tidy her up, and if I'd be happy to go to the morgue, maybe I could identify her there. But when I got to the morgue with my mum and my sister, they said no, it wouldn't be good for me to see her like that. They let me say goodbye to her at the morgue.
Without seeing her?
The lady took her hand out of the blue bag and she let me hold her hand. All I could say goodbye to was her hand.
For months, everyone accepted that Caroline's death was a tragic suicide. But suddenly, things changed. A coronial inquest failed to determine how Caroline died. And Gordon Wood found himself being investigated by police, who, like Caroline's family, now believed he had a hand in her death. Gordon Wood's nightmare was about to begin. I have to ask you, were you at the Gap that night with Caroline?
Absolutely not.
You did not murder Caroline?
Of course not.
You did not cause her harm in any way?
Never. Not a single shred of evidence. And again, it's crystal clear in all of the evidence. Every single piece of evidence backs me up.
Have you told everything?
That I know, yes.
Gordon says on the day Caroline died, she'd said she was unwell and spent most of her time in bed. He'd checked on her at lunchtime. But when he came home that night, she was gone. He wasn't worried though, and fell asleep in front of the television.
And then when I woke up in the middle of the night, she wasn't in the home. That's when it got really, really panicky and something was out of place.
Gordon went in search of Caroline, driving to her father's home to see if her car was parked outside. It wasn't. Why didn't you call her father's house?
Well, primarily, I guess, because I didn't know what had happened to Caroline. I wouldn't call and wake anybody up in the middle of the night and cause alarm if I didn't know yet that there was something for him to be alarmed at.
He drove through Sydney's east, scouring their favourite haunts, and told police he found Caroline's car parked near the Gap. When you saw that car, you said you felt sick.
Oh, yeah. I do remember retching and feeling the stomach just turning over with dread and... Yeah.
You were quoted as saying that Caroline's spirit had taken you there.
It's nonsense. It's nonsense. It saddens me to say it, but the only evidence of that comes from Tony Byrne, and he attributes it to somebody else who says it.
Gordon had called Tony Byrne, Caroline's father, and her brother Peter to help search for her after finding the car. Using a small torch borrowed from nearby fishermen, the three scanned the cliff's edge. But police believed Gordon already knew where Caroline's body was. It is alleged that you said you saw Caroline's feet and legs.
Yeah.
Did you?
No, it's nonsense. You can't. You actually can't. Every single allegation and nonsense that's been said about this case, from me finding the body, from the spirit guiding me, the judges have just said there's not a single piece of evidence to support that.
The prosecution claimed it was the killer point.
If I had seen Caroline's body and knew where it was, why, when all the police were there searching before the rescue squad arrived with all of their mag lights, didn't they go to where I said it was? Why didn't they go to where I claimed it was? Because I never did.
The other part of the killer point seemed to be that you knew what she was wearing on the night.
Oh, they tacked that bit on later on. Yeah, they did try and throw that one in. But if you read the police statements, they asked me to go and find out what clothes she could have been wearing. And so when I took Caroline's dad and brother back, I had a look around to see what clothes was missing.
How did you know her wardrobe so intimately to know what was missing?
Well, I suppose because I'd bought most of it for her. And she didn't have a huge wardrobe. Everybody says, oh, Caroline was a model, she had a huge wardrobe. It's nonsense. It's not true, Liz.
The investigation into the 24-year-old model...
Today, detectives were back at the Gap.
Caroline's death and Gordon Wood's alleged involvement was now being coloured by rumours, fuelled by his association with his employer, high-profile stockbroker Rene Rivkin.
Well, the media drove it.
Michael Bowe is Gordon Wood's lawyer.
It's a good story. It's got Rene Rivkin in it. It's got politicians in it. It's got actresses in it. It's got beautiful model in it. It's got everything that makes television up and go.
If I hadn't worked for Renee Rivkin at the time Caroline died, Tony Byrne would never have come up with any of his theories. If I had still been involved in my fitness business or I ran a fish and chip shop, none of this would have ever happened.
Rene Rivkin was making headlines of his own at the time. He'd surrounded himself with a group of young, attractive men, including Gordon, and he was being investigated over what was thought to be a suspicious fire at Offset Alpine, a printing business which returned an insurance payout in the tens of millions for its shareholders.
Words can't describe this feeling.
Caroline's father, Tony Byrne, believed the death of his daughter and Rivkin's business dealings was somehow linked.
It all came from the allegations made by her father about Renee Rivkin, and she was killed because of the fire, or she knew too much about his business, or that she was leaving me, and if she left me and wasn't tied into some secret inner sanctum through me, that she would spill the beans.
But why did they... I mean, I still don't get it. I mean, why?
Well, I'd love to know the answer to that, but all we can go by is what are the facts. And the facts are on the record that Caroline's ex-boyfriend was a policeman at the time. He was a jilted ex-lover who drove the campaign to get her death investigated as a murder. And I was clearly the target. I've got absolutely nothing to hide.
In a bid to tell his side of the story, Gordon agreed to this interview in 1998. But when it was over, he said this.
So do you think I did it?
I don't know. I'm like the coroner.
If you look at the interview, I'm there like a stunned mullet the whole way through it, and I'm on the defensive all the time. And at the end, I'm like, well, so, I asked him the question. And of course, the bit that they don't play later on is he says, no, I don't think you did it. But, yeah.
You clearly regret that moment.
Yeah. That's why I was so reluctant to have this conversation with you.
What role do you think you've played in all of this?
I think in terms of the public, I think being deeply private and intensely shy, I've not presented myself in a particularly sympathetic manner in the public domain.
While Gordon Wood's public demeanour was being critically judged, what many people didn't know was that Caroline harboured a deep secret, that for years she'd battled serious depression.
Why do you think that she didn't tell you?
I don't know. I blame myself at times that I may not have picked up on the signals that maybe were being...
Her mother had committed suicide in 1991, and shortly after, Caroline had attempted to take her own life. 2 days before her death, Caroline had sought medical help and was to have seen a psychiatrist on the day she died. She never made that appointment.
She only told me of her depression in a day or two before she committed suicide. And my approach, and I've reproached myself for maybe not being sensitive enough at the time. I had no idea it was as serious as it was.
Despite Caroline's history of depression, Gordon was still being treated with suspicion. He left Australia, believing he could no longer get a fair go.
Were you on the run?
No, of course not.
Were you hiding?
No, but not from the police or anybody.
Were you ever funded by Rene Rivkin
Never.
while you were away?
Never. I never had anything to do with him after I stopped working for him.
It took 11 years before Australian police decided to charge Gordon Wood with murder.
You had no idea that was coming?
No, none at all. And I can remember that very clearly. Every single ounce of moisture in my body just vanished, and I couldn't swallow. I nearly fell over, I was giddy.
So what made a murder charge possible after all these years? Well, incredibly, 8 years into their investigation, police decided they were wrong about where they'd found Caroline's body here at the Gap and identified a new location. This second spot, they believed, meant it was impossible for Caroline to have jumped. Physicist and police witness Professor Rod Cross set out to determine whether Gordon Wood could physically have speared Caroline off the gap. But only this police officer in Professor Cross's experiments was able to show it was possible. And he was 10 centimetres taller than Gordon Wood, 25 kilograms heavier, and had the strength to bench press 120 kilos.
When you heard this spear throw theory, what did you think?
Why? I mean, and Professor Cross himself asked the question, why would you do it? When you can, if you wanted to kill somebody off the cliff, surely when a push will do, why would you go to the trouble of picking them up? And how would you do that if they didn't want you to?
Gordon Wood was tried for Caroline's murder and found guilty by a jury. He was sentenced to 17 years jail.
When you heard that guilty verdict, how devastating was that?
I immediately had a drink of water, and I remember, this is such a silly thing, it's this stoicism in our family. I can't show my feelings. I just can't show my feelings. And I remember being disappointed in myself that I picked up a glass of water to take a drink and it shook in my hand. And I remember thinking immediately, they're going to say that in the press, they're going to say that about that I was shaking. And I was determined not to show my feelings. Isn't that ridiculous?
Fell apart. You're just not thinking, you're just reacting. It's just an emotional moment.
It's the worst nightmare. It's like a sudden death of somebody, because they take them away and everything stops from that moment on.
Gordon Wood spent more than 3 years locked away, while his family and legal team worked to get him out.
The only way to get an appeal up is to find errors in the way the trial was conducted and to find fresh evidence, which is evidence that wasn't available at the time of the trial that might have led the jury to come to a different decision if they had been aware of it.
So that's where you stepped up.
He did a lot of investigation. I mean, part of it too was for our own sanity.
We started to find out about certain things, certain parts of the evidence that wasn't correct.
Was there a eureka moment for you when you thought, yes, we've got what we need?
I definitely thought when we found out that the 1996 photo, which allegedly showed bush on the northern ledge, was in fact a 2003 photo. Yeah, that had its sense of eureka about it.
This photo of the gap was critical to the case. The prosecution had produced a grainy black and white version, claiming that this dark shadow was a bush. They argued the vegetation would have prevented Caroline from gaining enough of a run-up to jump and land at the spot that they say they found her. In other words, she could not have committed suicide.
But when you saw the full photograph, you realise that the grainy black and white mass that was supposed to have been bush was in fact sun shadow, and there was the entire length of the rock, 5.6 metres, which meant that just about every single one of Professor Cross's subjects could have easily run and jumped and landed headfirst in the hole.
And what did you feel at that moment?
I went, this is incredible. Where was this photographed? Why did they produce this grainy black and white copy? Secondly, the photograph was taken by the New South Wales Police. They had the original. Why didn't they produce it?
The 3 appeal court judges cast doubt over many of the crucial elements of the prosecution's case. Gordon Wood's team had argued there were 9 grounds for an appeal, and the judges agreed with 8 of them, ordering Gordon Wood be immediately released from Goulburn jail.
Tell me about that moment you heard the news from the appeals court.
Well, it was for me it was fantastic. So, and I couldn't wait for the Chief Judge to finish so I could get out to see Gordon and tell him.
Everybody knew except me, basically. Everybody.
So then I rang and said, pack your bags, mate, we're coming to get you.
Yeah, I'll never forget those words.
For Gordon Wood, Michael Bowe and the legal team, it was an emphatic victory.
There's no doubt the Crown has failed to prove their case against you.
Unequivocally.
But does that make you an innocent man?
Of course it makes me innocent.
Or does it just mean they didn't have enough evidence?
They didn't have any evidence, and it's in the verdict list. I'm found not guilty, I am acquitted. What that means in law and in English, in reality, is I am no more guilty of Caroline's death than you.
I saw a quote from Caroline's father saying that during the trial he'd looked across at you and for a moment felt that if you'd come and said sorry, he would have forgiven you. Can you forgive him?
Of course. No hesitation. All of my family forgive Mr. Byrne. And he was and always will be my love of my life's dad. I would never disrespect that.
Clearly he wants to continue to hunt you down.
Yes, sounds that way.
Does that worry you?
No, I don't think it causes us worry.
Is that right, Andy? Does that get it?
Gordon Wood is now getting his life back together, spending most of his time with family and friends.
Smartphones were not really out.
He is now nearly 50 years of age and having to start again, from reapplying for his driver's licence and passport to finding a job.
You are a free man now. How odd is that?
Odd, very odd. No, it's right. Actually, it's right, but it feels difficult to adjust to.
Did you think it would be this hard?
No, I really didn't. It's caught me out. I've struggled with mentally adjusting and emotionally adjusting to life. I've missed out on a career. I've lost all my money. I've spent all my money and my family's money defending myself. So I've got to make all that back. But I have a big responsibility to make it up to my family and to take care of my family for what they've been put through. That's my response. I'm the man of the family, and that's my job. Not my job, that's my desire. And that's what my life is about at the moment.
And there may be yet another chapter to this long-running ordeal. Caroline Byrne's father, Tony, is considering appealing to the High Court against Gordon Wood's acquittal. The New South Wales Director of Public Prosecutions is not pursuing the matter.
Hello, I'm Adam Hegarty. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our extra minute segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.